Hello, this is two non-critics, and I
Non-critic.
am non-critic Dustin. And you are, sir.
Non-critic Will, a.k.a. Antonio Banderas.
Oh no. We're two lifelong friends and film buffs with very different tastes who come together and talk about movies. And if it looks like I am distracted at the moment, it's because I kind of am. The reason for that is um, we are going to have our first live viewer, and I'm trying to get the link to send so that that live viewer can join us. So bear with me. This is an experiment, and I want to make sure that it works. So until then, non-critic Will, why don't you kind of describe the movie we're talking about?
Well, the movie is a 2011 film, a international film, Spanish film called The Skin I Live In. It's directed by Pedro
Almodovar.
Almodovar, and one of the main actors in this is Antonio Banderas, and you also got Elena Anaya and a few others, but those are two important ones for me. Anyway, but The Skin I Live In is pretty much
Sorry to
about
cut you
this.
off, but the link is I have sent you the link. I don't know if you can text that to our viewer or not, but um, you might be able to. You want me to take over?
Yeah, yes. Thank you,
Sorry,
thank you.
people. I know we don't have many viewers, but if you do join us, I apologize for our experimentation. This whole show is an experiment. But The Skin I Live In is a 2011 film, as he said, directed by very well-renowned Spanish filmmaker Pedro Almodovar, and stars Antonio Banderas, just as he said.
Antonio Banderas.
We began the show with our very bad Antonio Banderas impression. And non-critic Will actually suggested I watch this film based on a suggestion by a lady friend of his who may be our viewer. You're signaling me. What's up?
Oh no, I was just going to interject on that. Yeah, it was my lady friend, my lady. She she recommended me to watch this movie. We actually watched it. We watched it together, like we were on Skype, and we both had the movie. We watched it, and by the end of the movie, I was just like, "What the fuck?"
Who am
Like,
I dating?
yeah, like really, like this is what you watch? No. But no, seriously,
Yeah,
it was a very interesting movie. Like I didn't expect it to end that way. I didn't expect it to get to a certain point, and I was blown away. Like I was just like, what the hell is this? But that's why I wanted non-critic Dustin to watch it because it really piqued my interest, and it was a movie that was recommended to me by my lady. So
you might want to raise your camera up a little bit. By the way, you're just a chin at the moment.
I'm just a chick. Hey,
There we go.
it's okay.
Full glory.
Hola. But yeah, it was
That's all the Spanish we know.
I know a little bit more, but
No, nope, that's it.
yeah, nope. No, but it was a very interesting movie. Very, I don't know if I can use dark more so.
I think it was pretty dark.
Dark, twisted, shocking, surprising, all that in the above. But anyway, what was your thoughts on the movie?
Well, I am sorry. I'm sharing this link with others because I mean, if this works out and she's able to view us, let me see if anyone else can as well. But again, this is all an experiment. But if we're going to experiment on a video, let's do it with this one for crying out loud. The first thing I have to say, I'm a little embarrassed for not being familiar with the filmmaker Pedro Almodovar, being that he has been doing this a very long time. He is very highly regarded. in the film community and whatnot. In fact, Quentin Tarantino, everybody's favorite guy, at the moment, has said that if there's one filmmaker working today who he thinks he looks up to the most and has a body of work that he feels is worth emulating, it is Pedro Almodovar. And so, again, I was kind of ashamed of myself for not being familiar with him. But I will say, I remember when this movie came out, and I remember knowing nothing about it except for the cover for the movie reminded me of Vanilla Sky a little bit, because in the cover of the movie she's
It
wearing
does.
that face mask.
Yeah.
That reminded me of the face mask that Tom Cruise wore in Vanilla Sky, and I knew I was like, oh, that seems interesting, and I remember there were lots of good reviews for it, and I hadn't seen Antonio Banderas in anything in a while that wasn't a Shrek movie or a Spy Kids movie, so I was interested in it, and I just never got around to watching it. So when Non-Critic
Yeah.
Will suggested it to me, I was actually pretty excited. And it's no secret to anyone who watches the show, sometimes when Non-Critic really suggests a movie to me, I'm like, oh my god. This one, I was excited right from the get-go. And I have to say, I was also blown away by this movie. And
Let's try to. She's watching. She's watching. I just got the text.
uh,
It works. She's watching.
yay,
No,
hi,
no
viewer.
cut. No cussing, please. No cussing,
She
please.
doesn't like cussing.
No, no, no. It's probably other people that are watching as well.
Like
So
little
no,
kids or something.
I have no idea, but no cussing, please.
I
Just
ask
just
what
stick
little
with.
kids are watching. I can't help it.
Just stick with it. We're talking right now.
What's the difference between us cussing now and cussing in the other shows? Anyway, but it but first, oh my god, no, anyway, at first I didn't know what to make of the movie because it was starting to feel a little random to me. The movie was going on, and it was at a nice pace, and I
Yes.
sort of thought I figured it out. I was like, oh, he's like a modern day Frankenstein.
Yeah.
He kind of pieces people together, or he creates a new skin, and he does all this kind of stuff because that's what Antonio Banderas plays, a plastic surgeon, and who is incredibly talented and very highly regarded. He has his own lab in his house, his own clinic, and I got the impression that he was going to just like stalk the streets and find people and experiment on them, and that's kind of what happens. But about 15 minutes into the movie, there's this weird guy who shows up who's
Yeah.
like dressed in a tiger thing, and
Tiger costume.
yeah, and I was like, all right, okay, because and it was weird too because they just fired the staff of the house, and then this guy randomly shows up, and I was like, all right, this movie's taking a weird turn, and then it gets really messed up, and
But
I was kind of like, it's gonna,
before before you continue with that, before no, but no, but before you continue with that, I thought like it was interesting at the beginning of the movie, um, because it seemed like it was going in one direction and then went to a completely different one. Like
right,
when it first started talking about um, changing your skin, like making it tougher, so like you couldn't be burned. Uh, Bugs, mosquitoes wouldn't bite you because of the different scent of your skin and using pig cells. I think he was talking about. So I thought it was going in a whole direction like that of trying to make a superhuman in a sense, and then it went completely different. But anyway, continue.
it's I oh man, I started to get the vibe kind of like a David Cronenberg movie. Like back in the day, back before David Cronenberg was considered an artist with his movies like A History of Violence and Eastern Promises and A Dangerous Method and things, he made what they call body horror. All of his
Yeah,
movies were very concerned with the human body. and I was like, ooh, maybe this would be like a David Cronenberg type of movie where it's
Yeah.
kind of a horror movie, but it's about the body and how the body breaks down and about preventing the body from breaking down. Then the tiger guy shows up, and I'm like, oh wait, is this going to be like a home invasion movie?
The tiger guy.
And like the tiger guy gets really weird, really quick, and it quickly just descends into rape and craziness, and I was like, what? And then the movie changes again, and it changes
Yeah.
into sort of telling the backstory of how Antonio Banderas' wife died, and about
Yep.
how his daughter may or may not have been raped. And I was feeling bad for Antonio Banderas during this movie. Like, man, his wife cheats on him with his brother, then she gets burned in a car accident, and then she ends up like killing herself, and then his daughter gets raped, and I was like, this movie's bumming me out. And then they started to sort of explain where the girl came from, and the girl he's been experimenting on and crafting this new skin for her. And I was starting to go, please don't explain this. I don't want to know where she came from. I kind of just want to see where his
Yeah.
experiments go. And then they kind of they change it up where the girl you think the girl is his wife, right?
Yeah, because it looks like they said it looks like your wife.
Yeah, you think the girl is his wife, that he's somehow been bringing her back to life again, very Frankenstein, and creating this new skin for her, maybe because of the burn she suffered. And then you realize that is not the case. And I'm sorry, there's no way to talk about this movie anymore without spoilers. So there's going to be a lot of spoilers coming up, and I
Spoilers.
apologize ahead of time. But shit, sorry. And then come on. Basically, what it turns into, I won't go into all the specifics of it. I won't spoil it that much. But what it turns into is this woman he's been experimenting on was once a man who he feels wronged him, and his revenge is to kidnap this person and give them a sex change, and over time turn them into a woman, right?
Yep.
That's when I started going, okay, this movie's really picking up, because I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it at that point when they started to explain the backstory of it. And
Yeah.
then when they were starting to re-explain certain things, I was kind of getting bored with it. And then when I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is where they're going, I really was sold on it. And by the end of the movie, I was totally engrossed in it. I wanted to know what happened next. And not only that, but you sort of get the impression that there's a very unorthodox but very real relationship forming between these two characters,
Yeah.
and I kind of wanted them to be together. It's really weird, but I was like, I was kind of like, yeah, it's not really conventional how they came into each other's company, but I almost wanted them to stay together, because not only had he been through so much crap, and I felt so bad for him this
Yeah.
whole time. There's not only that, but I'm like, that this man who is now a woman is going to need to build a life for herself. Why
Yeah.
not with him?
Not the
So,
creator.
I mean, yeah. Exactly. So I guess that's as spoilery as I'll go, and next I'll just go into what I thought of it all. Overall, I thought it was fascinating. It was like a horror movie without being a horror movie. It was like
Yeah.
a science fiction film without being science fiction, and it was a tragedy with definitely being a tragedy. One thing I'll say that really stood out to me about the movie is Antonio Banderas himself, not just the character, but his performance.
Yeah.
I've always kind of not liked Antonio Banderas, not for any reason other than my mom was obsessed with him. But I was like, God, I'm so sick of this Antonio Banderas guy. So I never really gave him much credit, but seeing him in this, the dude can act.
Now, is it because like I don't know the Antonio Banderas movies that you've seen, but is it because it was mostly like action, like Desperado or Zorro or anything like that, that you got tired of it?
Well, I just thought he was a heartthrob, and that was it. Like, I mean, yes, I saw him in the action movies, but I mean, I also saw him in what is that called? It's I want to say it's Bohemian Rhapsody, but I don't think that's what it's called. Um, where he's sort of it's like a romantic comedy he made with
Okay.
Melanie Griffith, who he
Yeah.
went on to marry for some strange reason.
Yeah.
Um, I saw him in that. It was kind of a comedic role, and I saw bits and pieces of his other like Spanish language movies, but I just never really considered him much of an actor. I thought he was just a pretty face, and in this, he's incredible in this movie.
See, kind of the same with me. Like, as far as films that I've seen with Antonio Banderas, it's been mostly action. Like I just said, Desperado, Zorro, Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Just a bunch of. The only thing that I've seen him in that's not wasn't per se action for him was Spy Kids. He was just the dad, that was captured. That's it. But to see him in a serious role like this, he really did a great job. I really did appreciate, respect the character that he played. Yeah, like you said, he went through a lot of tough times, and that can make you go crazy. Finding out that your wife cheated on you, then she burns in the car, then she kills herself, then your daughter goes crazy. And then she gets raped. Like it's a lot that a man can take that will just put you over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And you definitely see that in this movie. He went over the edge to the point where he seems like a mad scientist. He's getting revenge, but he's also in that category of a mad scientist. Like he is Dr. Frankenstein.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But you told like you basically what you said is what I completely agree with. You totally buy it. You get it. You see why he's doing these things. They don't just say there's not some generic reason for it. You see this progression, and that's what you don't. Even though what he's doing is terrible, you don't hate him for it. You don't like him for it, but you get it. And you can't necessarily say that if you were as brilliant a surgeon as he was, and if you had all the money he had and the privacy, you can't say you wouldn't necessarily at least consider doing what he did. And
well, I'm sorry. No, one thing I wanted to say, like when the first time I was watching it, one thing that I made a little funny comment while I was watching it was that it seems like he's done this before. Like what? Spoiler alert: the situation with the guy in the tiger costume, aka his brother. It's like the beginning towards the middle of the movie. He ends up killing his brother for a certain reason. Kills his brother.
For a very good reason.
For a very good reason, but I can't just say, I'm not going to explain that reason because I don't want to be a spoiler on that note. But it kind of seemed like he's killed people before because he already had places to hide the body and burn the clothes and everything. I'm just like, man, damn, like, you must have done this already. Like, what's going on here? And then for me, big shock, like, there was a certain point when I realized that the person that he was experimenting on was the guy he kidnapped, and now is the woman. I think it was like, yeah, when he started to take off the mask, like instantly I was just like, oh my god, what? Like I was just blown away. Like really, like my lady, she was laughing the whole time at me because I was just like, what? I could not believe that was a kid. Like I did not expect that. This whole time they're showing two stories. In a sense, it was showing two stories. And the thing is, you remember when they were sleeping, and Antonio Banderas had his dream, and then she had her dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I still wasn't picking it up at that moment, but what she was when we were watching it together, she was telling me, she's like, oh, they're having the same dream, and I'm just like, how are they having the same dream? What is going on here? And then it made all so much sense once it finally was a big reveal. Like, oh no! Like, you got your ultimate revenge, but it kind of turned into a love relationship. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how that worked, but yeah.
Well, actually, that dream sequence, when the camera panned over and
Yeah.
it started moving on her, I realized what was going to happen right away. Like I was like, oh wait, no way. And then in the
No.
dream, they started to focus on that guy. I went, oh, my ears perked up, and I was like, oh, they're not going to do this. Oh, I guess they are. And Antonio Banderas sort of gives my favorite line in the movie, just because he delivers it so well. After the operation, the first operation on this
Yeah.
man, and he wakes up, and Antonio is just kind of standing there looking at him like this,
Yeah.
and he's like, "What happened? What did you do?" And he's like, "A vaginoplasty or whatever that word is." He just said it, vaginoplasty. He didn't even like sugarcoat it. He didn't build up. He just said, "I gave you a vagina." like,
Pretty much.
like it's funny, but also very strange. And to go back a little bit on what you said about, or what we were discussing about how you can kind of, we see the transition. After I watched it and I texted you about it and you called it twisted, you said twisted movie, and I replied with, I was like, yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah, yeah,
The
you said
reason
that.
the reason I said I guess, because on the surface, like just hearing us talk about it, it sounds really twisted.
Yeah.
Um, because you can understand his motivations behind it, it suddenly doesn't feel that twisted to me anymore. To me, in order for something to be twisted, it has to just go against what my sense of order is. And
Yeah.
not usually the idea of kidnapping someone and forcing them into having a sex change over the course of several years would
Six
offend
years.
my sense of order.
Yeah.
But after you follow his thought process and you see what happens to him, that sort of weird jumble of a
Yeah.
twisted idea sort of straightens out, and you see it perfectly. Then it, for some reason, it doesn't become twisted to me anymore. I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
But see, the thing that was twisted to, like, okay, I can understand um the revenge that he was trying to gain with what he did. I can understand that. But when it got more twisted to me was the fact, like I kept saying this over and over, if this is a person that you're getting revenge on for something that he did to you, how are you falling in love with this person? That was when it started getting twisted to me. Like, okay, I understand, because if anybody did that to me, um, can't say what he did, but if anybody did that to me and I wanted to get revenge, yo, yeah, that's a sweet revenge. But I'm not gonna fall in love with you.
Well, you
So,
have to think he lost his wife,
mhm.
got her back, lost her again, forever this time. He lost his daughter, got her back, lost her
Lost
again.
her again.
So the only thing he's had to drive him as a human being is this weird project. Over the years, your obsession sort of becomes your sense of normal. And when you've been as out of the box and strange as that is, when that's all you're living and breathing for years, eventually you might start to think maybe I have nothing else. Maybe everything I had that I thought I needed to have is gone. Maybe this thing I would never consider suddenly is the only thing I've got, and he holds on to that, and like there's a scene where they talk about promises they made to each other and how important it is to him that she keeps those promises. That I honestly believe it's like he's thinking like I have gone as far as I can go without just my brain melting, and I
Mhm.
need you to promise me that we're gonna stay like this. Otherwise, my brain's gonna melt, and I know what's gonna happen. So and on the reverse side, for the now woman who was once a man, um, to for her having feelings for him, that's total Stockholm syndrome. You know, the idea that you're held by your captor for so long, you start to love the person who captured you. You
but
lose sense of self, and that's all
but
you
here's
have.
here's the thing though. Would you say that the man is not a woman? Would you say he actually developed feelings for him, or it was just all an act because of what happens at the end?
I think he I think he fully developed feelings for him, but and I totally believe he was ready to live a life with Antonio Banderas until something happens, which is
Where he sees himself in
yeah,
the paper.
where he sees what he used to be, and then I think reality sort of sets in again, and
Hmm.
and his old sense of self comes back, and he realizes this isn't what I want. And the reason I think that is because there's a scene where he and Mr. Banderas are engaged intimately, and it's not working out. His new vagina is pretty torn up, and um, he mentions he has a lubricant that might be able to make things better. Goes to get it and stops for a minute and thinks, like, sees that picture of himself, and you sort of see him making a decision, and that's when he grabs the gun. So I don't think it was an act. I think it may have started that way,
Hmm.
but then it totally became reality for him.
Like
Which is
this
why I
is
was
all
like,
I know.
yeah, if that's all you, if the world you knew is just completely gone. For instance, okay, this is kind of an extreme example, but just today,
Hmm.
um, uh, 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 I guess a guy I know. He writes for the same website I do. He's an independent filmmaker. His name is Gabe Rodriguez, a very immensely talented dude. He and I exchange emails every now and then, and he and I got on the topic of Star Trek, and he suggested these two Star Trek episodes that I had never seen, and one of them was an episode where Captain Jean-Luc Picard, his
Hmm.
consciousness gets zapped, and it winds up in the body of another human being, and he has to sort of build a life for himself as this new human being. And you see him as these years go on, as like 50 some odd years go on, his life on the Enterprise slowly becomes a dream, and he accepts this new life for himself. And he lives this life with this woman. They start to raise a family, and he becomes part of the community. That's an extreme example of science fiction. It's not the same scenario, but I honestly think if you were kept in this room for so long, and the only human contact you had was with
It's
this
him.
man, I think eventually you would just your old life would you would give up on it and just try to survive this new way. So yeah, I mean that's a long way of re-answering your question, but I totally think that
So,
is real.
okay, my final question to you is what character stands out to you the most then?
Hmm. The
Hmm.
obvious the obvious one would be Antonio's character. Um, and I guess since he's the obvious one, I'll have to go with him because the now woman character, while that whole situation was very very interesting, it really was seeing Antonio's journey that sold the movie for me. That sold everything that happens.
Hmm.
Is seeing how he went from this guy who's just trying to make the best out of a bad situation to someone in a situation he probably never imagined in a million years he'd ever be in, and trying to make sense out of it. So yeah, probably. And also, like we said, I've never really seen him in a role like this before, so it stood out quite a bit. What about you?
It's a seesaw. I guess I guess I will say not Antonio, but the man that became a woman because of just the journey that he went through becoming a woman, um, being trapped. I think it was for what 6 years. Um, yeah, something. It was like 6 years, I believe, being trapped for 6 years and learning how to become a completely new person and still having those internal struggles with who you once were and what you are now, and still yearning to um, be free and to go back to the life that you had. I mean, even at the very end, I'm not going to spoil it, but even at the very end, you know, when he he's able to escape, you know, he's still trying to get in touch with who he used to be. You know, and one thing that was really touching and a big shocker, again, people spoiler, was when he met his mom
Mhm.
as a woman now, and actually his girlfriend, and he
She wasn't his girlfriend.
or the girl that he was
She
gonna.
was a lesbian.
It was a girl that he wanted to talk to, and he said that he was going to give her the dress that he was wearing.
Hmm.
So you know when he first told her, and then his mom comes out, and then big reveal, I'm your son, and then it just blanks out the credits. Like,
Oh, I love that. Actually, yeah.
yeah, it just it brings a very touching moment because you're finally reconnecting with not only your family but you, who you once were, and now you have to start over. You have to start from scratch with building a new relationship with the new personality that you have, with everything that you didn't know for the past 6 years that's happened with your family, that they don't know what's happened with you. It's a whole big explanation of how I became this new person that you see in front of you right now.
Hmm.
So he she stood out stood out for me the most. Um, and it's weird because at first, because of what he did, I was like, oh yeah, definitely, do the worst to him. But as the film constantly progressed, I felt bad. I was like, maybe I didn't mean the worst. Maybe you should have just beat him up or something. Maybe just beat him up so he can go to the hospital. That's it. But don't do all this because this is just torture. I wouldn't. I don't know. I wouldn't even wish this on my worst enemy. So I felt
No,
bad.
I felt bad too, especially because what he did is kind of a gray
Questionable.
area. Yeah, because I mean he didn't totally do what Antonio thinks he does, but it definitely can be perceived that way.
Yeah.
And I certainly believe that I mean his character didn't realize what he was doing,
Yeah.
and so that made the punishment so much worse, really. But I will say this movie it definitely turned me on to Pedro Almodovar. I'm going to check out more of his work. Apparently, a lot of his movies are like this. Not quite to this degree, but
Yeah.
a lot of the movies are about sexual transformation or physical transformation of some kind. And he works. I guess he works with Penelope Cruz a lot, and he originally wanted her to play this character, the
Yeah.
now female character. I thought that would have been really interesting. I like Penelope Cruz a lot,
Yeah. She's a
and
good actor.
I would have. I mean, the woman they cast, she's great. She's fantastic
Great.
in the role. I mean, it's not like they're stepping down. It just would have been kind of interesting to see her take on it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, really, really good movie. Really great. I was explaining to somebody once, just the other day, about horror movies and about how I sort of grew up with horror movies and they were my thing, and now I've been sort of burned out on them. I've brought it up on here before. And I said, now I like horror movies that I don't think are actually horror movies. And and this certainly falls into that case. It is very much, it is very horrific in a lot of instances, and it is sort of like a modern day Frankenstein in a different sort of way. But it is a horror movie. Like Pedro Almodovar, I think I'm saying his name wrong. That's why I keep saying it to see if I can eventually say it correctly. It's probably just offensive, but apparently he's described it as a horror movie without the screams, and
Yeah,
that's a pretty good way to describe it.
it is.
It's it's intriguing, very interesting movie, and I'm glad I watched it. Thanks for recommending it.
Thank thank her for recommending it because
Yeah,
she.
that was kind of for both of you. Like,
Hey.
but I don't have too much more to say. I'm gonna definitely watch more of Mr. Almodovar's movies and see what he's all about, I guess. And there you go. So we may or may not have a show next week. We're not sure. If not, when we come back, one movie we're really gonna take a departure from our usual and discuss a Shakespeare adaptation. We're going all
Ooh,
Shakespeare on it.
Shakespeare.
Oh yes, oh yes. But at least it's directed by Joss Whedon, so it's kind of still our usual fare, just because he directed it. But,
Yeah.
okay. Until
Uh-huh.
then, I am non-critic Dustin,
And I'm not Critic Will.
and we're never gonna find out. We're never gonna figure out what to say at the end of these. So whatever.
We're not.
We're just done.